Hi, I'm Dr. Drew Bogner, President of Molloy College, and I'd like to welcome you to the Public Square 2.0. In this program, we will be bringing you some of the great faculty that currently teach at Molloy College. They will share their insights on subjects that we hope you will find both entertaining and enlightening. Today's speaker is Laura Wood. She's an assistant professor in the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Department at Molloy College. She is also the current president of the North American Drama Therapy Association. Today she's going to be speaking about her work and research on therapeutic theater and eating disorder recovery. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Laura Wood.
Thanks so much, Drew. Thanks everybody for joining me today. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about my work and research. So I spent 7 years working with clients with eating disorders. And when I say eating disorders, I mean anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. And I worked in a residential treatment center serving these clients. And part of my work was to run 10 drama therapy groups a week. And clients with eating disorders initially really don't want anything to do with the work because drama therapy, as I'm going to talk about in a little bit, involves getting your feelings into your body. But by the end of their stay, they really loved the therapy work because they found it quite powerful. So once clients would graduate from the program, I would often see them 6 months after, a year after, and it was hard to hear that sometimes they would still be struggling. And so as I started to hear this pattern again and again, I became really curious about eating disorder recovery long-term and relapse. And what I found out in the literature was, in fact, most patients are at their highest risk for relapse in the first 6 to 12 months after their intensive treatment. So this really got me thinking, because we have a lot of great support at higher levels of care for eating disorder treatment, but somebody's going from 7 days a week of care to then maybe 1 session a week, right? So you're getting 24 hours of care, then you step down to maybe 15 hours a week of care, and then boom, 1 to 2 hours. So I started to think about how could we close that gap? The other thing that's really important to know about eating disorders that a lot of people don't realize is that eating disorders have the highest mortality rate out of any mental illness. So people often don't realize that piece. So when I looked in the literature, there was really a call for research and a call for creative work to come forward around types of follow-up treatment that we could give to clients with eating disorders. So another thing that's really tricky about eating disorders is how to define recovery, because people think, well, it's just, eat the food. Well, if it was simple as just eat the food, we wouldn't be having the problem that we were having. Recovery is actually a really complex topic. Not only does it involve getting a relaxed relationship to food, but it also has to be an internal change in the relationship to one's body, right? It also has to do with self-esteem and self-acceptance, and self-respect and self-compassion. A client with an eating disorder, often an eating disorder is a disconnect from the body. The eating disorder works to keep one disconnected from the body. And so sometimes clients with eating disorders have trauma in their background, or they haven't learned how to regulate their emotions. So the eating disorder comes in as a protective function to be able to keep the emotions away. So therefore, recovery also involves being able to get more comfortable with emotions, right? One also has to build relationships. We know with an eating disorder that sometimes the eating disorder becomes the client's best friend. And so part of the change in recovery also is about creating community and creating new networks. And one has to learn positive coping skills. So recovery is a complex topic. So I talked a little bit about the work that I had done in treatment, and I had mentioned the term drama therapy. So some of you might be wondering, what is drama therapy? So drama therapy is the intentional use of drama and theater processes to create change. And as I mentioned, because an eating disorder works to disconnect somebody from the body, drama therapy becomes really an important treatment because it requires clients to be in their bodies. And sometimes for many clients, it's the first time that they're in their body. I like to talk a little bit about drama therapy and how it changed my life. So before I came to being a clinical mental health counselor and a drama therapist, I was an actor and I was a theater person. And a long time ago, when I was in high school and doing theater, I was kind of like a goody two-shoes. You know, I got really good grades, and you know, I never broke the rules. And so when I was in a theater show, what I loved more than anything was playing like a really, you know, a sassy character, or like an evil witch, or, you know, some character that was outside of the box. Why did I like that? Because in my life I had to really, you know, put on being the good student and being the good kid. But then on stage, I could put on that mask of being a different role. And then when I would step off stage, I could say, well, that wasn't me. That was just a role I was playing. But if you play a role, is it you or is it not you? And that's part of the power of drama therapy, is that we believe that by playing role and taking on role, we create more choice and options for ourselves within the world. And we do that in the practice space, which is in the play space or on the stage. And as we're going along in this presentation, you'll see some photos of me doing improv and some photos of the work that I'm going to be talking more about. So, putting all of these pieces together, I decided we've got this problem. We've got a call for change to be happening in eating disorder recovery. I know this population really well from working with it, and I've discovered that there's a gap in treatment. Lots of care, very little care. So I started to think, what could we do to change this? And I decided that therapeutic theater might be an option to look at. So I created a theater company called Recovery Through Performance. And in Recovery Through Performance, we serve people who are on different recovery journeys using theater and drama therapy and group counseling to help them transform to being the actors and directors of their own authentic lives. So the other thing that becomes really tricky when you're an academic is thinking about, well, how do we research something as broad and sort of magical and creative as a theater production? And so when I look at the drama therapy literature and when I look at creative interventions, a model doesn't exist about how to do this work. And people have done therapeutic theater before. That's not particularly a new idea. And you know, the concept of drama therapy comes from long ago, right? The Greeks would come together twice a year. They would put on a play. There would be a comedy. Everybody would laugh together, or everybody would cry together in the tragedy, and there would be catharsis and healing. So, right, theater has been around, and our use of theater has been around therapeutically for a long time, but how to study it? So with my colleague Dave Mowers, we created the coactive therapeutic theater model. And this is a 6-phase model that we start with a discovery process. So the individuals come together. We use a lot of different drama therapy techniques and group counseling to figure out a theme that they want to talk about with recovery. So they get to choose the theme. We then use theater games to generate material, to create characters, and to find a metaphor that is going to help explain and discover their journey of recovery, what they want to share with the audience and what they want to explore. We then have a weekend intensive where we come together, we put all the work we've been doing, and we create a script. And then we move into the rehearsal process, and we begin to put the script up on its feet, right? And these are not people with a theater background, right? These are just people who are, in this case, in eating disorder recovery, and as my work's been going forward with new populations, right? And then we move into doing the performance. And the audience, which we call the witnesses, what we've been finding are also really touched by the work that's being done. And then in the end, we come together to use group counseling to relate the role back to their own life and to integrate the material to take it out into their world and their recovery in a more full way. So what were the research questions? I wanted to know, how was therapeutic theater, if at all, beneficial to participants? And how coactive therapeutic theater is maybe different than traditional talk therapy? And so we used a grounded theory study, a qualitative research study. I've done 3 productions now, and we've hit a close point of saturation. So what did I find out? I found out that putting on a theater production, 1, it provided containment. So what do I mean by that? Containment for a client with an eating disorder is it gave them structure. So they had had all of this structure in their life and then went to no structure. So now just the act of coming to rehearsal every Tuesday and Thursday really supported their recovery. 2, it helped them abstain from eating disorder behaviors. So there was like a great quote from one of the clients who in the interview said, you know, I left rehearsal and for the first time I went home since getting out of treatment and I didn't want to go binge and purge and I didn't want to go on a run to, you know, try to burn off the calories. I felt peaceful. 2, we found out that it fosters relationships. So if you remember earlier when I talked about what has to change in recovery, people have to build community, right? And so how did it help foster relationships? It taught the participants commitment. So when you're in a play, you can't leave your stage partner hanging up there. You can't leave the other actors hanging. You have to show up and commit to rehearsals. You have to show up and commit to your partner on stage, right? And it also helped them build community. So a lot of people talked about how after the project, they had new relationships, they had new people to talk to, and new people to help rely on in their recovery process. 3, it worked on practicing emotional self-regulation. So what I talked about, of course, was that the eating disorder is often the thing that's numbing the client out from their feelings. Instead, in theater, you get to play with feelings. Characters get to be angry, characters get to grieve, characters get to feel jealous, characters get to feel joyful, right? So the theater process helped these clients connect to emotions. It also helped them expand their comfort zone, right? So we know that eating disorders often, you know, they like to make somebody not look at all like they're there, right? To disappear away. When you're on stage, you can't do that. You have to practice being in your body and being big and being present. And so a lot of participants spoke about that experience. We also found that it advanced their psychological recovery, and in many different ways. So 1, it helped people with unfinished business. So we know that an eating disorder helps protect from some of those unresolved issues, and being able to play with those issues using metaphor in the process of the play was a way that people got to work on their issues. So one client, for example, had lost her mother at a very young age, and the eating disorder came in to support that process. So in the play, we wrote a similar narrative where then she got to speak to a mother-like character on the stage and say the things that she never got to say to her mother. It helps people challenge their cognitive distortions, right? So if you have that self-hate narrative in your mind and you're telling yourself, you know, I'm not good, I suck, I'm really bad, but then everybody tells you afterwards, you were amazing in that show, right? You have to challenge that thought process that you have inside. It also helped the clients take up space, like we talked about, being in your body. It helped people find authenticity, right? When they played these roles, they got more close to who they really were. It helped them be in their body, as we talked about, right? It helped them fully embrace their body. And maybe most exciting, it helped them be an agent of change. And so people were coming up and emailing participants in the productions and saying, hey, can I get together with you and grab a cup of coffee? I was so touched by the play, and I want to talk with you, and I want to connect with you. So that's a little bit about my work and research. And I truly believe that therapeutic theater is a way that we can help all kinds of people in recovery, because what we found out is everybody's recovering from something. And because the play is written in a big metaphor, many people can relate. So I'm excited to bring therapeutic theater to our communities to help create meaningful change. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back to Public Square 2.0. I'm Drew Bogner, and I'm here with Laura Wood, who's Assistant Professor in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. And she's been talking about her work using drama therapy, particularly with individuals who have eating disorders. Yeah. So I really loved your presentation, and
thanks.
I can see the acting in you. So I really wanted, my first question, which I think is the most important question, is, are you still a goody two-shoes? That's what I want to know.
Wow.
Did you get that out of your system?
So I would say that drama therapy and my theater background helped me change that, because just just as we say in the field, like taking on those roles helps you integrate it into the larger world.
So you're really telling me that you incorporated all those characters into yourself?
So I would say yes. I would say that I'm not quite as much as a goody two-shoes anymore.
We don't have to go into that completely, but I had to just ask you that. You know, I thought maybe we should just talk a little bit about eating disorders, because certainly that's a population you identified, and you saw some real advantages to drama therapy as a therapeutic response. But let's talk a little bit about the prevalence, maybe what we see in society. Has that been increasing, decreasing? Where do you see the prevalence? I'm interested in that.
Well, I think the thing that's really important about eating disorders is that people don't realize as they affect all people, all ages. Often we have, unfortunately, stereotyped an eating disorder as something for white women, and that it's about, attention seeking or control. But we now know it's far more complex than that. Anybody can have an eating disorder, and you can't tell that somebody has an eating disorder just by looking at them, right? No. That's a really important piece. So we're also finally shedding some light on binge eating disorder was just added to the DSM a couple of years ago. So that was a really important step forward for the mental health community. And we're also finally talking about men with eating disorders.
Yes, right? I was going to ask you about that, because I would think that normally we tend to view it less that way because of the way in which we stereotype women's bodies and all kinds of other reasons that we believe that it's much more more gender specific in some ways.
Right. Yeah, and what I'm really excited about is that now that we're beginning to shed light that anybody can be affected by an eating disorder, any age, we can see it later in life show up too. So we're seeing a lot of people in their 50s or 60s who are having a later in life eating disorder. We're seeing men come forward with eating disorders, transgender individuals who have eating disorders, people of color with eating disorders. So an eating disorder doesn't discriminate, and also an eating disorder is a protective function. So that becomes really important to talk about too, because sometimes people think that somebody chooses an eating disorder. But an eating disorder has both a hereditary component, a biological component, plus a stressful situation creates the perfect storm for an eating disorder to come in as a protective function for somebody.
So if are you aware that you have that eating disorder? How aware are you that? Or are you still struggling with some self-denial when you have that eating disorder?
I think everybody presents differently. Some people are aware, and some people just think, oh, it's a diet gone wrong, or, this is normal, or they feel like this is so unnormal and they don't come forward. We still have a lot of misinformation about eating disorders because of how we unfortunately portray it in media.
Yeah, and I guess what I was going to with that question was, if you worry that you might have an eating disorder, where do you go?
There's a lot of incredible resources that people can reach out to. If you're on a campus, I always encourage our students to go to like a personal counseling center. There's the National Eating Disorder Awareness Foundation that people can look up. It's called NEDA, that people can get more information. So, or any counseling center that you can reach out to should be able to make a referral for you to get the help that you need. And people are trained in treating eating disorders. It's a specialty.
Yes.
So not every counselor gets that training. So it's important to find somebody who has the training to really be able to support.
Exactly, but you could at least begin the process and then perhaps get a referral as well.
Absolutely.
I'm sure. So I was really interested in something you said towards the end about drama therapy and its ability to be effective with other kinds of conditions. But first, I just have to talk briefly about as being the president of the North American Drama Therapy Association, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very
cool. So you
were
telling me that you're going to do a lot of traveling, right?
Yeah. So I have some really exciting trips coming up. I'm going to be heading down to Chile next month to...
You said that right.
Yeah, thank you. To give a presentation on my work, and they're forming their first South American Drama Therapy Association. So it's going to be a great opportunity to do some training and to get to connect with the beginning of the profession down in Chile. Next year I'm going to be going over to London to give a presentation. And there's possibly, I just recently this week got an email from a person in Bangladesh who's hoping I can do some training with people in Bangladesh to use drama therapy.
So this is expanding?
Yeah, and drama therapy is all over the world. As getting to be the president of the North American Drama Therapy Association, I also get to sit on the World Alliance of Drama Therapy. And so I'm getting the opportunity to connect with people who practice drama therapy all over.
Yeah, so, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So proud of you, by the way.
Thanks, Drew.
So tell me about the other ways which you could, or other kinds of conditions where you think drama therapy could be really effective.
Yeah, so people, drama therapists are working with people all across the lifespan, all ages, from all backgrounds, walks of life. Drama therapy, many people think, oh, it's only for children, but that's really a misconception. So there's incredible work being done with drama therapists and people with addictions, persons on the autism spectrum, cancer survivors. I used to work with terminally ill and seriously ill children, work in prisons being done, work with students. So anyone that needs help or support, there's a way to use drama therapy for those populations.
Well, you are, you did put on here at Molloy the eating disorder show.
Yeah, so last year I got a lovely grant from Molloy and got to do the third round of this work.
But you are working with a different population.
Yeah, this was really exciting.
Next fall?
This spring.
This spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I gave a presentation on my work, and the speech language pathology department here approached me about using therapeutic theater with clients who have aphasia. And that's a new population, so I've been really getting to enjoy reading and learning. And what we're really curious about is, it's sort of twofold. How can the process of creating a theater piece help these clients have a means of expression about their experience with aphasia? And what I'm learning about aphasia is aphasia affects the ability to really communicate speech-wise.
You want to tell everyone what aphasia is?
Yeah,
Maybe we could,
it's a communication disorder, and I'm not a speech-language pathologist, but as I'm learning, it's a communication disorder. It often happens in patients who have strokes, and it affects the right side of the brain and the capacity to be able to express language and at times even read language.
Yes,
so there's
right.
different types of aphasia. And so we're going to be exploring how can therapeutic theater help people who are in aphasia recovery express themselves and have a place to work with that socio-emotional piece. And also, can the practice of the script also help with some of the language skills? So it's a really new, exciting area.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be happening in May here.
Yeah. Do you know if anyone's really have done that before?
So when we did a study, there's only been one documented group who had used drama therapy for aphasia. It was done out of Chicago, and it was done in the early 2000s. So it's going to be really exciting to sort of expand upon the literature.
So you're really excited about this. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too.
So, you think this is a growing field then?
It's absolutely a growing field, not only just in North America, but within the US. We've seen the amount of programs in drama therapy double. The certificate programs that are being offered has tripled. So as we're learning more about neuroscience and the brain, we're finding that talking alone is not enough, but that really bringing an embodied process in can really make a difference.
I think that's really fascinating. We were talking about this before. I teach history of modern Japan,
Yeah.
so I have a background in Japanese philosophy, and so to me, there's a strong tradition of being able to use the total body. That's really the idea behind
Right.
meditation in many ways, is that you have to get your consciousness out of the way and let your body and your breathing
Yeah.
become one.
Exactly.
And I think that's somewhat the case, because our minds can take us in so many different places, and occupy a lot of our conscious time.
Yeah.
And so I can see how the act of acting can change that,
Yeah.
because you're clearly portraying and have to be completely in the moment in order to be able to play your part.
Yeah, and even things like with our counseling students, I use improv games and I use a number of different drama exercises just to get them present in their body. So when they're
Absolutely,
sitting with another
absolutely.
person. So we're even seeing the counseling profession move into a more embodied and present mind, body, spirit connection rather than just being a talking head.
And that's, a danger we have, is that we are always in our mind with ourself and our ego, and not
Right.
really present in the moment in our bodies.
Right.
We were talking to, I was explaining to you, I think that in the Dominican tradition there are many different ways of prayer, and one way is a very active way of praying, And so really talks about how the body is such an important part of who you are, and you have to be able to be connected to it.
Yeah, and the body, when we're present with our body, it's what allows us to build more deep relationship. And so when I think about any mental health profession, being more deeply embodied, if we know it, relationship is what creates change in mental health counseling, in mental health disciplines, you know, the body is our vehicle to being able to do that.
That's right. Well, this is phenomenal, Laura. I always
Thanks,
enjoy talking
Drew.
to you.
I know,
and
likewise.
singing together. If you want to check out our carpool karaoke, you can check that out on YouTube. So I am really happy that, Laura, you were joining us. So we really appreciate our audience being with us on the Public Square 2.0, and we hope you will join us for another interesting session when we'll take on another topic. Thank you for joining us.